Hi, everyone. My name is Leah. Welcome to Tools for the Creative Life, our second installment in 2021. I work with Transforming Creatives, one of the partners in this series, and I'm going to start our time together with an acknowledgement of the land that we and our homes are on throughout the Denver area today. In countries such as Australia and Canada, and among tribal nations in the United States, it is commonplace and even policy to open events and gatherings by first acknowledging the traditional Indigenous inhabitants of that land. This simple action is a powerful way to show our respect and move towards the correction of the stories and practices that have continued to erase Black, Indigenous, and people of color's lives, history, and culture from our society. While acknowledgement by itself is a small gesture, it becomes meaningful when paired with authentic relationships and informed action. And that's why we're beginning today's workshop with our own living land acknowledgement, inviting and honoring the truth in this and all our interactions and gatherings. In the spirit of authenticity and reconciliation, we acknowledge that we are today gathering in our homes on the ancestral land of the Ute, Cheyenne, and Arapaho peoples. This area was also a site of trade, hunting, gathering, and healing for many other Native nations, and continues to be a major crossroads to Indian country. We recognize the 48 contemporary tribal nations that are historically tied to the lands that make up the state of Colorado, and honor the elders past, present, and future, as well as those who have stewarded this land throughout generations. We also recognize that our nation was built by the hands and on the backs of enslaved Africans and Indigenous peoples who have continued to be excluded and erased from our history, while others have been enriched by it. All that said, the survival of Black, Indigenous, and communities of color, along with their cultures and languages, is a source of deep celebration and inspiration. We stand in awe of their resilience and creativity and express gratitude for their ongoing contributions. We strive to never take for granted the privilege and complexity of living and working on this land, and intentionally honor the BIPOC communities in our city. We commit to move beyond words into programs and actions that fully embody a commitment to Indigenous rights and cultural equity, and strive to make this a safe and welcoming space where healing can occur, truths can be told, hidden stories can be unearthed, and legacies of oppression can be continuously dismantled. Let us not forget that this land was theirs long before we made it ours. So with that, I just want to give a brief intro to our series, Tools for the Creative Life. This workshop series, we've got 6 of them planned for 2021, was crafted to provide creatives with connection, new skills, inspirational capital, and tools to craft a healthy ecosystem for the creative and cultural industries in our state. We have a myriad of partners involved in producing this event, so I wanted to give each of them a couple of minutes to introduce themselves and what they do. So with that, I'd like to introduce Jen Dewey with the Denver Public Library.
Thanks, Leah. Hi, everyone. I'm Jen, and I'm an adult programming librarian at Denver Public Library. We are absolutely thrilled to be partnering with CBCA, RiNo Arts District, and Transforming Creatives on these awesome programs together. I'm especially excited for today's topic about managing our money, because not a lot of people always like to talk about that topic, but I think the more we talk about it, the better. So I'm really excited for that today. Denver Public Library loves helping small businesses and artists. I'll put some links into the chat with resources to that later. And I wanted to let you know that we have virtual programming every day for all ages. You can check that out at denverlibrary.org, along with curbside pickup and all sorts of other resources. So thank you again for having us as part of this. And I think I am turning it over to John with Transforming Creatives.
Indeed you are. Thanks, Jen. I'm John Mikowski, Executive Director of Transforming Creatives. And like Jen, we're honored to be partnering with these fantastic folks and their organizations to put on these workshops. Our mission is to invest in the health of creatives so they can invest in the health of society. And that investment comes in a few forms. We operate a creative workspace called Converge Denver in the RiNo Art District that is home to filmmakers and photographers and visual artists and designers and nonprofits and other super creative humans who are all working together in community to create a more just, equitable, and flourishing society. We also provide support infrastructure for them of financial, strategic marketing guidance, some mentoring, some classes and workshops, et cetera. And then finally, we provide direct financial support to individual creatives through a couple of grant funds that we have, including our Artists of Color Fund that helps move financial resources into communities of color, one artist at a time. So I'm just thrilled you're here. This is an important topic for creatives, so thanks for joining us today. And I think Allie is next up.
Hi, everyone. I'm Allie Sharp. I'm the Outreach Director for the RiNo Art District. I promise I'll make this quick so we can dive into the good stuff. Like everyone else, I am also thrilled that we are a partner on this workshop. We have a lot of very exciting projects and programs going on this year. Again, we've pivoted a little bit in 2021, given that, the beginning of this year is starting to look a bit like last year. So we are also partnering with the public library on some more youth-oriented programming too. So if you check our website, you can see some other virtual programs we have going on. And shameless plug, we have our annual meeting coming up at the end of this month. So I can put the link to that if anyone is curious on other projects and programs that we're working on this year. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Meredith with CBCA, and she is going to introduce our speaker for today.
Thanks, Allie. Thanks, Jen, Leah, and John. This is such a wonderful collaborative series. And we at CBCA are always thrilled to be a part of it. I'm Meredith Badler. I'm the Deputy Director at the CBCA, which is the Colorado Business Committee for the Arts. And our mission is all about advancing Colorado's creative economy through that intersection of arts and business. So we offer lots of trainings and webinars and education and programming, often similar to this, for artists, cultural organizations, creative businesses, and others all over the state. We have the joy of bringing you all a wonderful financial advisor who will be leading today's presentation. Annie Kiser is a financial advisor with an organization, Maya Wealth. And I've had the pleasure of seeing Annie present and share her wisdom a few times now. And I'll just say, I always appreciate her openness and making these topics very accessible and understandable. She understands where you're coming from. This can often be a conversation that elicits anxiety or confusion or fear. So kudos to you for even just joining us today, for taking that first step to realizing as an artist, as a creative, as a business owner, as a member of our community, understanding how to manage your money, how to plan for your future and your financial success is something you can do. You can do it. And just joining today, you have already taken the first step. So with that note of positivity, I'm going to turn it over to Annie, who will lead us through her presentation. As you have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. We'll be keeping an eye on those and either answering them throughout or saving them. We have a good chunk of time at the end for Q&A. So Annie, take it away.
Hi, kudos. I mean, well said, Meredith. Thanks for being here. I feel like as a financial advisor, I'm kind of like one step above. I'm like a dentist. So delighted to be here again. My name is Annie Kiser. I work for an independent wealth management firm here in Denver called Maya Wealth, and we focus on creating comprehensive, highly individualized plans. So thanks for spending your lunch hour with me. And I'm here because I kind of have a thing for artists. Not in a creepy way, but it just so happens that a large number of my clients are career artists or have 9-to-5 jobs, and they're in the process of trying to transition to really making their art their primary source of income. I've also love working with arts-based organizations. And so I I'm definitely familiar with some of the challenges, the financial challenges that this group faces, not only financially but also kind of psychologically. I feel like there aren't socially, we don't do a great job of encouraging and promoting artists to think of themselves as money generating machines. And so I think that the creatives and artists are really natural entrepreneurs. And so I'm thrilled that to be here with all these partners. You guys do amazing work. And where I come in is I'd really like to step in and help provide some financial clarity and structure to ensure that you as the creatives are really doing what you love and set up to make money doing it while also properly planning for the future. And really a lot of that starts with just kind of claiming your worth as a professional. So we have a lot of content to get through today. We'll sort of briefly talk about the importance of goals, establishing goals. We'll look at the different components of a financial plan. And thanks to those of you who filled out the survey, I'm assuming that many of you are artists and either already independent business people or, again, kind of wanting to make that transition to stepping into your own business. So we'll be talking about some key strategies for small business owners and independent business owners. And then we'll end up the session really thinking about how to actually implement positive change and adopt some healthy habits. So if you have a piece of paper, just entertain me for a second before we kind of get into the meat and potatoes of today. So when I sit down to work with a client or a prospect, it's really, really critical that I understand your goals and that you understand your financial goals. And that can be kind of a daunting question. We don't always necessarily know what those are, especially if you're not particularly interested in money or it's a source of stress and anxiety. It can be really hard to see what's right in front of you. And so everything that we're going to discuss today is really hinges on having a clear sense of what's important to you and establishing financial goals based on what you value, not what like the rest of the world is telling you to value, but really what you value is the first step in creating a sustainable plan. So just take 2 seconds before we dive in, either make a mental note, but just write down kind of what money means to you, what you value, and what some of your goals are. Great, thank you. So thanks for indulging me. We're going to talk about what goes into a financial plan. And when I use this like relatively cheesy analogy of kind of a house when I talk about the components of a plan, just because everybody understands the components of a house. But just know that as I'm going through these different elements, the goal is not to necessarily do all of these things at once. It's just these are big items to tick off as you go through your life, depending on where you are. So we'll start with the foundation. And if you're thinking about building a home, you have to have a strong foundation. And what that means from the perspective of a financial plan is not having debt or being very strategic about your debt. And you guys, I'm sorry that Prezi, there's going to be a lot of things shooting out at you. So you've been warned. So if you're thinking, okay, I have student loans, I have a mortgage, I have credit card debt, a question that I get all of the time is how do I focus on getting those paid off when I have all of these other conflicting goals? And really the short answer is that you have to think of paying off your debt as an investment in your future. Nobody wants to do it. you want to avoid it, but that's just a monster that will rear its ugly head. So there are two strategies. The first is the snowball method, and this is really knocking out your smallest debts first. It feels good, but really you end up paying more over time in interest. The second is the avalanche method, and this is again attacking your higher interest debts first. So if you are someone that has debt, I would recommend making a list of everything. Have your student loans, your credit cards, your mortgage, again, whatever it is, your car loan, start with the highest interest rate and then tackle that one first. Then once that's knocked off, move to the next one. Progress will definitely feel slower, but you'll end up paying less over time. And just like one more thing to note about debt is, again, another question that I get is, well, should I focus on paying off my debt exclusively before I focus on my savings or other investments? And really everyone's financial plan and savings goals are going to look different, but I definitely encourage people to build emergency savings at the same time you're tackling your debt. And that typically means that you have to be very disciplined about your spending. We'll get into cash flow management a little bit later. So that's our foundation. So just for you to know, as we're moving up the levels of these, I don't know if I already said this, but as we're moving up the levels of the house, we're increasing the level of risk. So we're going to go into this liquid room. So the liquid room is where you house your emergency savings, and 3 to 6 months of living expenses is kind of that generally accepted rule. If you're somebody with variable income, I would err on the side of having more like 6 months, a little bit more. But if you're in a couple and one of you has a stable income, you're probably fine with 3 months. Really depends on how conservative you are. And so the types of accounts that hold these funds are checking accounts, savings accounts, and money market accounts. The advantage to these obviously is that they're fully liquid. You're not going to lose money. You can access them within a day, but the cons are that you're not keeping up with inflation. So you have inflation risk and purchasing power risk, which basically means that the value of your money is going down because you're not keeping pace with inflation. I can tell you how many people I meet who have way more than they need just like stashed in their savings accounts because it feels safe. But at a certain point, there's certainly more that you can be doing with your money. So this is your liquid room. We're still on the first level of the house, but we're going to now move over into the fixed room, which is, again, also safe. So this is where we keep our fixed investments. So we're talking certificates of deposits, government bonds, fixed annuities. These are considered safer because you're not going to lose money in these types of accounts. The disadvantage is that you're typically tying up your money for an extended period of time. So you don't have that quick access to your money that you do in your savings accounts. So for certificates of deposits, for example, if you pull the money out before the stated time horizon or the term period, there's typically an early withdrawal penalty. Excuse me. So you do have downside protection with some potential for growth, not as much as being directly invested in the market, but there is some growth, more than you would get in a savings account, for example, but still quite safe. So we're going to move up a level into the intermediate room. And this is where we're going to get invested into the market. And we call this intermediate because it's really for goals between now and retirement. And for a lot of people, that includes buying a house, paying for kids or grandkids' college, saving up for a home renovation, again, sort of these bigger purchases. Or if you're approaching retirement or you're already at retirement, they can simply be liquid accounts where you're invested in the market according to whatever your risk tolerance is or your time horizon. So you can see that there are different types of accounts, to accommodate different goals. So we have brokerage accounts, 529s, which are for education, education savings accounts, and then the last two are custodial accounts for minors. So the upside here is that you do have potential for growth, and within all of these accounts, you can decide how risky or conservative you want to be. But again, you're exposed to the market, so there's always a risk of loss. Okay. Now we're going to move up to the third level of the house, which is our retirement room. And this means, being that it's on the third level, means that you can take more risk here. And typically with retirement accounts, you're not going to access it until you're 59 and a half. And the government really incentivizes this behavior by penalizing you with a 10% early withdrawal penalty, and then taxing you on top of that. So we'll get into the different types of retirement accounts for small businesses or sole proprietors a little bit later on, but just know that within these accounts, you can take on more risk because the time horizon is significantly longer. And even that applies to even if you're about to retire. If you're 2 or 3 years out from retirement, you still have to have these accounts last you 30, 40 years. I mean, you probably won't be as aggressive, but you still have to find that balance between risk and reward, because you don't want to outlive your money. So some of the beneficial components to these retirement accounts is that they offer tax deferred growth. So that means that as you receive gains in these accounts, you don't have to pay taxes on them until you pull the money out via a distribution in retirement. The two types of accounts here that are notably different are the Roth IRA and the Roth 401k. So investments in these accounts are made with post-tax dollars, which means you've already paid taxes on them. So when you go to pull the money out of your retirement account, let's say, that's 10 or 15 years from now, and we're in a higher tax environment than we are now, you'll want to pull from the Roth account so that you don't have to pay taxes like you would from your traditional 401k. All right, and now we're going into the risk attic. This is at the very top of the house, and it is an attic because structurally houses don't necessarily need attics, and much like in your financial plan, you don't need to have this level of risk, but some people like to play in the attic. And so these includes, the investments in this room include stock options, sector funds, individual stocks, cryptocurrency, and just know that you're exposed to, yes, high growth potential, which is why they're attractive. We could totally get into the GameStop situation. We won't right now, but options trading can be very attractive, but there is such potential for loss, and typically these are much more technical types of investments. So if you do want to play in this room, make sure that you can afford to lose whatever you invest. So just allocating a very small percentage of your overall portfolio. So this is our house, but we need a roof to protect all of the rooms and our furniture and everything that we've saved so hard to decorate our home with. So we're going to now get into how do we protect our investments. Now the zooming is going to really intensify, so get ready, but then it will end. So this is temporary. Really basic health insurance, critical component. Again, this is sort of geared towards independent contractors. So you don't want to pay for surgery out of your bank account. If you make sure you have insurance, work with a broker to find a plan that you can afford. But people have gone into financial ruin because they haven't had health insurance. Next, we have disability insurance. If you're unable to work for a period of time, where's your income going to come from? Maybe in the short term, it'll come from your emergency savings, but longer term, it might be something to consider if you are very reliant on your body, for example, for your work. So a lot of surgeons and dentists have disability insurance, or if you're healthy but you have a family history of chronic illness in your family. Next, we have life insurance, and this is a really huge topic, and for the purpose of this presentation, we're just going to keep it to the most basic type of life insurance, which is a death benefit. If you're married and you own a house, really smart to have life insurance. If you have kids or a single high earner in your household, life insurance is a really good idea. Term policies are very inexpensive. And there are these things called living benefit riders that are available. If you have chronic illness or a terminal illness, you're able to access a portion of the death benefit while you're still alive. Really, really uplifting stuff, but good to know about. This is my favorite. Oh no, not this one. Sorry, we missed long-term care insurance. I'm not passionate about property and casualty. Oh, I guess I'm out of whack here. Property and casualty insurance, really basic. You need to insure your home. You need to insure your auto. Personal property insurance is if you have fine jewelry or art that you want to protect, and then an umbrella policy will protect you against lawsuit. Love to sue in this country if somebody falls on your property or in your house. I'm just kind of zooming through this stuff, obviously, literally. Okay, long-term care insurance. I think that this is such an important part of everyone's planning. Great time to start looking at it in your 40s or your 50s when you are, still young and vibrant, and it's affordable, like so many things. When people need long-term care insurance, it's too late. But it's a really an effective way of protecting against draining your assets and burdening your loved ones by covering a portion of the cost of either being in an assisted living facility or having an in-home healthcare. I mean, as you all know, healthcare is so expensive in this country. So I really encourage people to think about long-term care insurance. Okay, then we have tax planning. This is another critical component that goes into all of the planning that we as comprehensive planners do. And this is just really a way to be strategic about how to build your wealth. You really want to make sure that you're aware of your tax brackets. You want to avoid overpaying taxes. And this is particularly important for small businesses where cash is king. You don't want to overpay. You also want to be conscious of how your business is structured, because it can have an impact on how you claim income and write off certain expenses. So make sure you have a good CPA. And then finally, the final component to all of this is estate planning. This is really just making sure that your assets go to the people you want them to, and that you avoid overpaying estate taxes. I have a client. She's a pretty well-known artist, and she is, I would say, she's in her mid to upper 70s. And I've been really, really working with her to get her estate plan in order, because again, if you have a body of work and you're an artist, it's also a way of being really intentional about the legacy that you want to leave. So it's not all doom and gloom. It's a way of really empowering you to think about, again, your legacy and how you want to honor your life's work. So this is really just, again, a framework for thinking about your individual finances. I encourage you, if you still have that piece of paper out, if there's a particular room that you might not have, or a question that you have, just take a minute to jot it down. So another question that I get asked all of the time, and I hate this question, I sort of hate that I have this slide, quite frankly, but I think it's human nature to want to know, where should I be? How do I stack up? How much should I have? And my answer to that is, well, it totally depends. So take this chart with a grain of salt. This is something that Fidelity published. If it makes you feel good, great. If it makes you feel horrible, give it the flick and don't think about it ever again. The reality is that everyone's time horizon is completely different. Everyone's goals are different. Everyone's values are different. But just as a complete general sort of benchmark, having something in the realm of 10 times your salary in retirement, which is loosely, it's more like 72 now, but here it says 67. Again, I think that this isn't, if you are someone who has variable income, this isn't as helpful, but you know, again, if you don't like this, just make sure that you do have a savings and plan in place that will work to help you get closer to your goals. It is good to have sort of a sense of how much you will need, but again, you want to make sure that that number is coming from the life that you want to live. And one of the advantages to working with a planner is that we work together to customize a plan that's really designed around your goals, your vision, and your values, and nobody else's. So that's the kind of first component of this presentation is the financial plan. We're going to transition now into talking about some specific strategies and solutions for small businesses. Again, I'm making the assumption that that is most of you, so hopefully it is. When it comes to financial planning, being an independent business person is really difficult. You have far more responsibilities, and it can be really hard to work on your business and in your business at the same time. It requires a ton of discipline. You really have to step into the role of and mindset of being a CEO. And this can be a challenge, as we spoke of earlier, especially if you're not really super passionate about the topic of personal finance, or you have an aversion to numbers. But the upside is that you have so much opportunity running your own business and autonomy to really determine how you want to run it. You're doing what you love, and you also have unlimited potential for learning and growth. And I think what John was saying is that there are resources out there for people who are running their own business. So you don't have to go it alone. So as you know, there are numerous elements to manage when you're running your business. But today we're really going to just hone in on cash flow management. You really have to know, okay, I'm not very good at multitasking here. You really have to know how to manage your inflows and your outflows before you can start seriously saving and investing your profits. It's like 101. Cash is oxygen for small businesses. So really have to be, I know we hate this, but we do have to be more strategic and scrupulous with our spending than our 9-to-5 friends. You just can't afford to avoid it. So the good news is that you don't really have to be like a finance wizard. It's not that complicated to get cash flow under control. You just have to be willing and curious to get a little bit, you have to be willing to get a little bit uncomfortable. That initial phase of learning can feel not so good. And you really have to commit to getting organized and having a plan that makes sense to you and that you'll follow. So I want to just go over a few guiding principles. And the first one is really about getting organized. It's amazing to me how often people enmesh their personal finances with their business finances. If you do nothing else, make sure you separate the two. And even better, pay yourself from your business checking account. You really don't want the two mixed, because it makes it very hard to get an accurate measure of your company's financial status and also your financial status. It's also very hard during tax time to identify what was a business expense and what wasn't. And finally, you're operating a legitimate business, not a lemonade stand. So like really own it. So separate business from personal. Next is establish dual business budgets. And this one's a little weird, but stick with me and I'll explain to you why this is a good idea. One is for what your company, right, you as a business needs, and one is what you want. And the budget for what your company needs is your bare bones, only the most critical expenses necessary to run your business. And it's really empowering to know that you can operate like at the lowest level. And the lower you can get your operating expenses, the better. It really allows you to be much more nimble when times are tough. I mean, we've seen in this last year, companies that have high operating costs, who had several months of really low profits, have either had to close or have been put into tremendous financial ruin. So it's really important to know that you can survive on little. Then as you begin to make more money, and just this also applies to your personal budget too. But again, we're speaking about in your business currently. As you begin to make more money, having a budget that incorporates your desired expenses. So these are things that would be helpful for operating efficiency, like that the marketing coaching or the new software. And these are all really shiny things that are marketed to us because we're like, oh, it'll make us more money. But I think being very scrupulous about what do I really need to run my business versus what do I want. And so having these desired but not required expenses identified in advance really helps you to prioritize where to effectively allocate resources when you do have extra cash. It's human nature when money starts to come in, if it's been like lean times, to just want to spend. So set up some guardrails for yourself. And just one more thing on that is that if you do already have a budget established, just review it regularly. Make sure you aren't paying unnecessary expenses in memberships or subscriptions that you aren't using. It's amazing how easy it is to just sign up for things and we don't realize what we're paying for. Okay, next is re-examine your fee structure and pricing. This one's so important for artists. I would say 90% of the time you're undercharging. You're, whether it's for your time or for the piece of art that you put 15 hours in and spent, $300 to produce. But be really, really conscious of how much am I spending to create this product, and what is my time worth? Is a really, really good chance that you're undercharging for your services and for your work. And also another thing to remember is that your hourly rate has to take into consideration all of the expenses and taxes associated with running your business. Usually that number is going to be uncomfortable. You're going to be like, I don't want to charge that. It's too much. They're going to say no. But what if they don't say no? What if they say yes? Another thing to think about is, are there ways that you can create reoccurring revenue? If you already have an operational business, how can you create reoccurring revenue with your current client base? Or are you in a situation where you have to start from zero every month? Always use your creativity as creatives to think about, make how you can create more revenue streams. And then finally, not finally, oh gosh, sorry. Okay. Establish a tracking system. And this is another one that really trips up people. You do have to, at a minimum, you just have to know your numbers. Not managing cash flow effectively is truly one of the main reasons why small businesses fail. So maybe it's helpful to think of the numbers not as numbers at all, but just vital signs like your heartbeat or your blood pressure. And you don't have to overly rely on technology. I'm clearly not a techie, so if you are, great, but you really just want, this presentation is like a third grader put it together. So you're like, wait, this, anyway, you know, stay in front of your inflows and your outflows. I'm just teeing up an accounting methodology that I always recommend for small business, for small business owners and people with a variable income. But at the end of the day, make sure that you just know your numbers. How you do it is up to you. Okay. And the last success principle that we're going to talk about in a little bit more detail here is paying yourself first. What? That's weird. The typical business accounting principle is that you deduct expenses from gross sales and then you pay yourself what's left. But the problem with that model is that you're putting yourself last. And there's a good chance you might not get paid. So profit first, and I don't know if you guys have heard of this, it's a methodology that's widely popular. Mark Markowitz or something is the name of the guy who wrote the book. Widely popular, very effective accounting methodology. And basically what you're doing is you're flipping the model and you're deducting profit first from your sales, and then you're paying your expenses. So this is a system that tells you exactly how much of your revenue to set aside in effectively 4 separate bank accounts for 4 separate purposes. We're going to do like a really quick overview of this. If you're interested in learning more, let me know and we can see if it's appropriate for you. But essentially you're giving every dollar that you earn from your business a job, a very specific job. And it's a little bit tedious at the onset to set up. But once you get it running, it's very, very efficient and easy. So you would have one account for your operating expenses. So this is the account that you use to run your business. You would pay all of your expenses out of it, your bills, your payroll, if you have payroll beyond yourself, utilities, marketing, etc. Then you have a profit account. And this is the account that you use to pay yourself quarterly bonuses or to build emergency savings. Oh gosh. And then you have an owner pay account. I can see John smiling over there. This is the account that you use to pay your fabulous self a monthly income. And then finally, we have the tax account because you have to pay taxes. Sorry, I'm going to move all of your heads up here. So this is the money that you set aside to pay quarterly taxes. Okay, so let me just go a layer deeper into how this works. So you have your 4 accounts and you're like, great, now what? What do I do? So when money comes in, you have these 4 accounts set up. You want to allocate a percentage of that revenue towards each of these 4 accounts. And what we have here, so here money comes in, here are the accounts we just discussed. And then let's say your business makes under $250,000 a year, okay? So according to the amount of revenue that you're bringing in, you would put 5% of that, whatever comes in, into a profit account, 50% into your owner pay account, and 15% into a tax account, and then 30% would go towards operating expenses. Oh, this is the name of the guy, by the way. So what that looks like in practice. So say you sold a painting for $1,000 down here. So that 5% in your profit account would be $50. Your owner pay, remember the profit account is kind of like your bonus, special sauce, extra cherry on top income. Your owner pay, you get $500, and then your taxes and your operating expenses, $300. So again, it's just a little bit of a learning curve to set up. And those percentages, you can have some wiggle room. It really depends on the nature of your business, but you're being very intentional with with how you spend your money, the money that comes in from your business. And I love this for people who are just starting out, because it's actually much more aligned with human behavior. Just the nature of how we operate. Like when you were a kid and you had a paper assignment and you were given a week to do it, you would wait until the last minute to do it. Well, most people, I would. And I think it's the same thing with money, right? You're going to spend the money and probably keep it for your ease. Again, you as the business owner will be the one that suffers the most, because you'll put everything you have back into your business. And it really provides some clarity and structure and control. And it also, again, it very much reinforces your self-worth. Pay yourself first. That's why we work so hard. So that's profit first in a nutshell. This would be when I would be like, any questions, but I can't hear or see any of you. So, okay. And then we're going to briefly talk about retirement planning. A lot of people don't realize that there are a number of different retirement plans that you can contribute to. And again, these are qualified accounts, so opportunities to stash money away. Again, really important. This is all on your shoulders if you're independent. So you can't really afford to not be aware of what your options are. And you want to be proactive about it. So good to know the pros and cons of all of these. So we'll go through that right now. So we'll start with plans for single person businesses. So if you are a sole proprietor or just a single LLC, and you know that you aren't going to hire any more employees, the two primary options are the solo 401k and the STEP IRA. So the solo 401k is an ERISA plan. That's not entirely relevant to you. All you need to know is that it's subject to the Employee Retirement Income Security Act, which basically means that you have more reporting and administrative costs than you would for like a SEP, for example. So the max contribution for this is $57,000, because you can make contributions as the employer and the employee. That is a huge chunk of change. Now you can't write all of that off, but you can write off a pretty good portion of that. The other thing I like about the solo 401k options is that you have a Roth component to it. So you can divide your contributions between pre-tax and post-tax, which is what we talked about earlier. It typically costs somewhere in the, well, not for the solo, never mind, ignore me. Okay, SEP IRA. Again, I love this one. You can contribute the smaller of $58,000 or 25% of your total revenue. This account is a little bit easier to set up, just again, because it's not an ERISA plan. So it'll be cheaper and a little bit more straightforward as far as reporting. But it is important to note that if you do have employees, that if you decide to hire somebody, you are required to make contributions to their accounts if you are contributing to your account. And if you are the employer, you're eligible for tax credits up to $500 a year. Just another thing of note. Okay, so those are for the one-person bands, the solo 401k and the SEP. Plans for small businesses. And I think of a small business here. I mean, if you're 2 people, you are a small business. I have set up 401ks, traditional 401ks for small businesses. I think people discredit that, and it's a really powerful resource to offer your employees if you are thinking about growing. They can typically be administered for about, depending on your payroll provider, between like $75 and $130 a month. And then as the employer, you have the option to also administer a Roth if you want. Max employee contributions are 19,500 if you're under 50, and then there's a catch-up if you are over 50. You can contribute up to $26,000 a year. And then the simple, again, this isn't an ERISA plan, so you can easier to set up. The contribution limits are less; they're only 13,500, and there are required employee contributions. Okay. And then individual plans. Some people don't realize that even if you're doing a 401k at work, you can still have an IRA. So just again, individual plans are the traditional IRA. There are no income limits for this. The max is a $6,000 annual contribution, and you can deduct the contribution that you make. For the Roth IRA, again, if you make over $139,000, you're not going to get the same. You can't qualify. And if you're a joint household, the max is $203,000. There are some like backdoor hacks if you make more money. I won't really get into that right now, but all is not lost as far as your after-tax contributions. But again, made with after-tax dollars, and the max that you can contribute is $6,000 a year. All really exciting stuff. Okay, so there we go. Small business owner, starting a business, don't discredit starting a retirement plan, even if you're only contributing like $50 a month. Use the tools that are available to you as small business people. Not small, but small, you know what I mean? So I'm just gonna breathe for a second. Covered a lot, and I'm just gonna pivot a little bit. So I often, one of the things that I love about what I do, so in a previous life, I did my graduate work in community and behavioral health. So I'm sort of a behavioral health scientist in a way. And I'm fascinated with how we as humans interact with this weird thing called money. And so I think of the human relationship with money as a health behavior. It's kind of like our diet or our exercise. And like anything else, when it comes to our money, we can have healthy or not so healthy habits. And, you know, I've emphasized the importance of having clear goals at the beginning, but they're really only as effective as the action that you take to achieve them. None of this matters, quite frankly, unless you are like, okay, I will implement it. So if you are interested in taking the next step in your, you know, financial relationship with your money, you want to implement some of the strategies we talked today, you're feeling motivated, just going to go over a few practical tips for how to incorporate some healthy money habits. And again, this can include, this isn't just for your business, this is for your personal and your business finances. They both need love. And I could talk ad nauseum about this, but I'm going to keep it short. So the first really basic thing is routine. Like anything, whether it's a financial goal or a fitness goal, you know, achieving success requires regular, consistent attention. And none of this is going to be new information to you guys, but it's just, I think it's important to be reminded that as humans, we lose track of the basics sometimes. So I don't know who said this quote, but it's what gets measured gets managed, and that could not be more true. So when it comes to your finances, whether you're like you're an obsessive over checker, or you're like a chronic avoider, make sure that you find some balance wherever you are, and just set up regular monthly check-ins with yourself. Put it on your calendar. Show up for yourself like you would if it was an appointment with a client or a deadline for a piece of, a commission that you were doing. again, we really are pretty shit at putting our needs first a lot of the time. And so create a ritual around it, reward yourself. I have a client who loves wine, and once a month on Fridays, she will, on a Friday, she'll sit down and just go over her books and pour herself a really expensive glass of wine. And so whatever gets you excited or motivated, or however you have to trick yourself to do the thing you don't want to do, but create a routine and ritual around your money, and reward yourself once you've done it. Next is mindset, and money and fear really kind of go hand in hand, especially this last year. And actually the market's done incredibly well, but when we're thinking about our money in times of uncertainty or volatility, the thing we're afraid of is what we tend to focus on. And we forget about the bigger picture. Again, just human behavior 101. So before you sit down to have your check-in, whenever that is, write down your top 3 goals, whatever they are at that time, right? And then kind of put that aside and cross-reference this with a master list of financial goals. You guys will get handouts that will have all of these things that I'm talking about. So just as a parenthetical statement. But cross-reference your goals at the time with a bigger, kind of more global list of goals. And more often than not, you'll identify things that are important to you that you may have forgotten. So really, I can't reiterate how important it is to go back and reprioritize your goals, what's important to you, because that's going to change. It's just a way of recommitting and reconnecting to the things that you care about. Okay, systems. This sort of falls under the category of tracking, but people hate budgets, like hate them, especially my clients who are artists, because I'm going to tell you a little story. So I have a client, I love her dearly. She has always said to me, Annie, I'm terrible with money. I hate spreadsheets. And it clicked one day that she hated spreadsheets because as a highly visual person, conceptual visual person, the number held no inherent value in it. So she figured out, she actually found an app called, I wrote it down, Truebill, that is super visual and visualized her spending in a way that made her, it clicked in her brain. And she was like, okay, I can do this. I'm actually not bad with money at all. But the point is, you need to have some way of tracking your money, and how you do it is up to you. Make sure that it is in alignment with how you like to receive information. Don't beat yourself up if you hate budgets. That's okay. Or if you hate spreadsheets. But you really just need to know 4 basic things. How much money comes in monthly, how much money goes out monthly, when and where is it coming in, and when and where is it going out. If you like the profit first method, that's a wonderful way of tracking. If you don't, just write it down on a piece of paper. Everyone has their own system, but really customize it and work on it. I'm waiting to partner with some techie artsy person to develop a budgeting app that is really specifically designed to highly visualize people. So if any of you are interested, want to collaborate, hit me up. Would love to talk about this. Okay, and then where are we now? Focusing on what's right in front of you. So this is money and control, money and fear, money and control. These are, again, they go together like birds of a feather. And I think in a year like we've had, we have this perception of control, which is maybe like obsessively reading the news, following the markets, checking in on your portfolios. And in the behavioral finance world, there's something called myopic loss aversion, which is really, it's interesting. And really what it is that the more that you more time you spend sort of checking in with the news and these external stimuli, which are very much rooted in emotion and fear, you're increasing your chances of making bad decisions. So you might feel like you're staying on the ball by checking and monitoring, but you're actually kind of setting yourself up to make bad decisions for yourself. Oh, did I get a hand raise? So when it comes to those long-term investments, less is more. I mean, focus on the things you can control, right? Your mindset, your behaviors, what's important to you, what you're working towards. Small positive actions. Check in with your savings account all day long. Your checking account, great, but I know for your longer term assets, keep it to quarterly at a maximum, because you'll just torture yourself. You'll torture yourself, and you'll want to make changes that could be potentially detrimental to your finances. So. And then finally, it wouldn't be an Annie presentation if I didn't have a call to action, which is make a mental note, write down one thing that you can do to start next week feeling more in control of your money. I'd love you to have taken one good thing away from this hour of me rambling at you. So put pen to paper, make an intention. And this concludes the presentation. Actually, no, I will tell you how I work with people. So again, I work for Maya Wealth. Maya is the great goddess of growth for any of you who were curious. And I do comprehensive financial planning, a lot of systems and accountability coaching, investment management, blah, blah, blah. If you're interested, would love to have a chat with you, do a consult. I don't have minimums. I really encourage people who are willing and growth-minded and motivated. Those are the people I want to work with. So it's very much a reciprocal relationship. But please reach out if you want to chat more.
Thanks, Annie. That was wonderful. Like I said, I've had the pleasure of hearing your great wisdom a few times, and I always learn something new and rethink my own finances when I hear it. So I appreciate that. We did save quite a bit of time for Q&A. So if you can't continue with us, that's fine. But we hope that you can, and we can answer some questions. So while I let people take a moment to put some of those in the chat, there was one that had come up earlier, which I thought was a really good one about sort of drawing the connection between the house and the profit first methodology. So you have that 50% that goes towards your profit, or that goes to you. You're practicing that and paying yourself first. How does that then align with which room in your house you're putting that now that you paid yourself?
Absolutely. That's a really good question. So thank you to whoever asked it. So the house is kind of like, we're going to start on the lower levels. You want to, again, you want to make sure as cash is coming in, like if you have no debt, if you don't have any debt, but your savings is a little bit lean, you're going to want to allocate, again, a portion of your profit. You want to make sure you're covering your living expenses, but you're going to kind of want to tackle those floor by floor. And again, sometimes you'll do it simultaneously. It's really going to depend on the individual. So it's a little bit hard to give you a super specific answer, but those lower levels are really those foundational pieces. Now, if you're young, you can kind of, I would say that the fixed room, those are much more conservative investments. And if you have a longer time horizon, you would want to make sure, okay, you have a good debt strategy, you have a solid cushion in your savings, and you're contributing to longer term retirement. And then at that point, once you're kind of maxing out those things, then you could start to reallocate money into like a taxable brokerage account, for example. But the order of operations in the house will depend a little bit on really your age, your time horizon, and your risk tolerance.
Well, that preemptively answers my next question, is sort of how many rooms should you be living in at one time? But I think from what you're saying, it depends on maybe your age or your goals, on where maybe you're focusing.
Yeah, and again, you know, the house as an analogy is really just insight into all the things that I think about, all of the tools and components that we want to have, that we want to consider when we're thinking about your financial plan. But you know, I would say you want to have some level, the level of protection like on your roof is going to depend on the assets that you have. So it's, it depends, I'm sorry. You don't need to have, it depends on what your goals are really. But again, everybody should be working towards eliminating their debt, having savings, have retirement, and then anything in excess savings should be, that's where we can play a little bit. And depending on how adverse you are to risk, we could look at some of those safer fixed income strategies. Or if you're really young and you're like, no, let's like have an individual stock portfolio. So it's there isn't one right way to do it, I guess.
I love that, which makes it extra fun, right?
Highly individualized is the name of the game.
Yeah, there's a great question in the chat here from a performer. How do you budget when your income is so sporadic, being in the gig economy like a musician or a performer, especially now during COVID, where for many it's not just sporadic, it's maybe non-existent. You know, living in sort of a low income or very sporadic variable income, what's the approach to sort of managing whatever's extra when it comes to, you know, basic living expenses?
So I'd say, you know, when I first started in this industry, I worked for a firm that was commission only, and that's when I really had the shit kicked out of me, to be honest, because you have to learn very quickly, how to manage your expenses, right? You're like, if you have a variable and relatively low income, you want to make sure that you're as lean as possible. So that's kind of step one. Step two is you have to be on top of everything that you spend, and be really intentional about it. And that's just the reality when you have less wiggle room. That's why I like profit first for people that have variable income, because you're accounting for all of those things, right? Like, you know, you're a performer, so I don't know that you would have a ton of overhead expenses. Maybe if you're just an independent contractor, the only thing that you have to think about is paying your taxes, right? But you want to, again, make sure you're covering your living expenses. And then I think, again, if you are, you know, have a variable income, you want your emergency savings to be extra fat for times when you don't have a gig. So maybe 6 months, maybe a year. But you want to have the last thing that you want to do is have to put critical things on credit cards.
Yeah, and we'll get to that. I think there was a good sort of follow-up comment about this sort of profit first model and those percentages. If you are, let's say, a performer with maybe low overhead, you know, you already have your instrument or you have what sort of your basics, what that percentages that goes to operating, could be less to help you cover sort of basic living? I don't know if I'm answering that correctly. Yeah.
No, I got you. I mean, it's your world, right? That's I think the thing to take away from the profit first method is that you want to, again, be super intentional with every dollar that you make. And it's totally up to you, again, depending on the nature of your business and where the majority of your expenses are. You could reallocate that towards, you know, if you are paying off debt, or, you know, you want to have an account that's specifically designated for something, you can do that.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for folks on sort of being healthy with debt or credit and taking that on, and when that's a good decision or not a good decision?
You know, credit cards, not all debt is bad, right? Most of us have student loan debt. I'm hopeful that if you have federal loans, I know there are rumblings about getting 10,000 forgiven, and there've been talk of that 50,000. Who knows if that will happen? You know, most of us carry some form of debt, and I think when it gets very problematic is when you are accruing massive amounts of credit card debt, because we're looking at like 18% interest that compounds on itself. So if you need to borrow money, that's fine. I mean, there are ways that you can get small business loans, you know, lines of credit, but really, you know, in a previous life, I had a spending problem. And, you know, I think that, yeah, just be very wary of credit cards. If you're going to use the credit card, make sure that you have, unless you're like, sometimes you're desperate, right? But if you're going to use a credit card, make sure that if you're building up your credit, that you have enough savings to cover whatever the balance is. Really, a lot of people use credit cards for points, but really try to pay off the balance in full if you can. And if you need, again, funding from other sources, try to look beyond your credit card.
Yeah, and there are so many great resources out there for small businesses from our federal government, our local governments. The small business development centers have terrific resources. The library has terrific resources. So that's a good point. There are certainly other ways either to get loans or grants for what you're doing.
It's tempting. It's so easy, right? Like you're constantly getting, oh, we increased your credit limit. And it's like the quick and easy thing to do, but it's just the worst. Don't do it.
Switching gears a bit, there's a great question in here about, do you have recommendations for, ooh, my computer made a sound, for providers of long-term care insurance or some of those other, any recommendations on specific plan types or goals around sort of long-term care?
I would say, again, it depends. I think anyone that has specific questions would love to, you know, just give me a call and we can talk about it. When you're applying for individual disability, like private disability insurance, it's not covered by your work. It is a little bit of a, you know, it is a little bit of a juggling act, just because you want to be very strategic in the information that you're giving them. I'm not saying lying, but I always like to kind of get a sense of someone's history a little bit, if they have any prior health issues, and then it's my job to then kind of shop the market and find the best carrier. I don't. That's how I work with clients. So I don't have just kind of like off the cuff recommendations. You know, Ohio National is good. There are tons of good carriers out there, but it's gonna depend. Just wherever you go, if you're doing independent research, just make sure that they are reputable companies. Because if you're paying into a policy that's promising some kind of payout later down the line, you want to make sure that they're like approved by the Better Business Bureau and that they have good, like, you know, good ratings.
Yeah, for sure. And I think when you're just for insurance in general, and any of these providers, I think you're giving good guidance here, Annie, on just making sure you're asking questions and you're the client. You can shop around and make sure people understand you and your creative business, because there's nuances to all of those.
And the other thing I love, because the insurance agents, I know this because I used to work in the insurance industry, so go in with a budget in mind. I think that that's a safer way to approach, because it can, if you're at the whims of just someone trying to sell you an insurance product, you could just a lot of people are overinsured for a lot of different things. Before you engage in that conversation, again, know your numbers and be like, okay, this is what I'm looking for, and this is how much I am willing to spend.
Yeah, awesome. We have a great question from our library in the chat here. Do you have any favorite finance books that you can recommend? And I'll expand that to books or websites or podcasts, or what are some other resources if people want to dive deeper?
Oh, there's so many. I'm of course I'm gonna freeze now, but I think one of the most classic, I love Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. It is.
Can you say that again?
My dad gave it to me when I was like 14. Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. It is been around a very, very long time. But I like it because it kind of gets at some of the mindset bits. The Intelligent Investor is, again, really heavy reading. There's definitely nothing light about it, but if this is coming from who I think it's coming from, then I think you might be interested in kind of getting into more of the technical components of like what goes into making good, smart investment decisions. You know what, I'll include, I'm kind of having a brain blank, but I will give it some more thought and include some websites and links in my follow-up materials.
Thanks, Annie. And there have been, I know Linda and some other folks have been putting some links in the chat throughout, so we'll make sure those get compiled and sent along as well. Some advice about, making sure you're staying on top of your quarterly taxes and some other great resources.
Huge. Yeah.
I don't see any more questions coming in, so I'd love to give you, Annie, any closing thoughts, and then we can turn it over to the rest of our partners here to wrap us up.
Just that I look forward to the day when I can look you all in the face and not have to do these on Zoom. That's one of the reasons why I do what I do, is I love meeting you all and hearing your stories. And just so grateful for all the partners for putting this together and giving me your time and attention this afternoon. It's an honor and a privilege, and if I can serve you in any way, I would be delighted to chat.
Thanks, Annie. Well, I'll turn it back over to the rest of our team to share what we have coming up next and to wrap us up.
Yeah, thank you so much, Annie. I think that was really super helpful. I feel like I generally do a good job of like my own personal budgeting, but it's more of those longer term goals. So I really appreciate you providing all of the information and all the details on our mindset and our focus points and how important that is to integrate into all of our financial goals as creatives. We're really excited about this series, all of us partners are, and we've got a couple of other events that we've already scheduled. On March 17th, our next event in the Tools for the Creative Life workshop series is a creative's guide to applying for grants and open calls. I think this is a really exciting continuation of this financial planning. If you have a project that you're really looking to put on, or a performance that you want to find some funding for, and there might be a grant opportunity out there, an open call, this will be a really wonderful event for you to attend. We've got Louise Martirano from Redline to talk. We've got Crystal Polis, who's a freelance grant writer here in Colorado. And then we also have Brendan Picker from Denver Arts and Venues. They're going to be doing a panel style event, and I'll be leading them through some questions, discovering what makes a successful grant proposal for artists and how you can prepare that yourself. And then in April, we will be working with Michael Gadlin, who's a successful visual artist here in the Denver community. He serves on a number of nonprofit boards and at galleries, and he's going to be talking to us about how to price your artwork and how to price your services. So that's in April. We've got events. Jen, thank you so much for popping April in there, and March, or a little earlier. Can click on those links, head over. They're free, just like this event is, presented by the same partnership group, and we hope that you will join us for them. With that, thank you all again for coming. It's nice to see some faces, hear some questions, learn. Thank you again, Annie, for your wonderful presentation. And we'll see you all next time.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.